Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I am Vadim Perlovsky, and today we are excited to taste not one, not two, but three different brands in one evening. It is a plethora of brands, if you will. And if you're looking at my shirt, you will probably guess what region we're tasting from today. Today, we have three new brands to us from Japan. I'm super excited to explore and learn about more Japanese brands. We know the core ones that everybody knows, but it's nice to discover what else is on the market. What else is Japan coming out with? What other distilleries are making great stuff? So joining us today for the first time, and definitely not the last, is Luana. She works with CNS Imports. I met Luana at one of the events here in LA. We got to talking. She loved the idea, and here we are. So thank you so much for being here. I think it's all regulars on the call, so everybody knows the drill. Get nerdy, ask questions, have fun. But other than that, Luana, please, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about CNS or the brands or what have you. The floor is yours.
All right. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with all these amazing whiskey lovers. So CNS, we import Asian spirits, so not just Japanese whiskeys, but also Taiwanese whiskeys, Indian whiskeys, and baijiu, which is a Chinese spirit. That's basically what brought us to the market about 40 years ago. And we have a great selection of Japanese whiskeys that are fairly broad from north to south of Japan, completely different profiles. And I put together a selection of that I think it shows of the variety of products that we carry. And happy to share all that with you guys. I think the first one we should be trying today, it's Daimyo Shinobu. Shinobu is a distillery that has already have several awards. It's from Niigata, so more north of Japan, comparing to the next one that is from Okinawa. So a climate that is a little bit more rainy, sort of England, UK style. I would say more comparing to, we would say maybe Scotland, perhaps, so a little bit colder. Lots of rain, very well known for beautiful waters coming from snow. And Shinobu, the most important thing about this distillery that mostly work with Mizunara oak, which is one of the characteristics of Japanese whiskeys. Mizunara, if you guys are not familiar with, is one of the most spectacular oaks in the world. Only grows in Japan. Takes about 200 years for the tree to be ready to become a barrel. So it's a very selected product, very special. And usually you just finish the whiskey in Mizunara. It gives a completely different sort of notes to the whiskey that people nowadays kind of tends to recognize as Japanese whiskeys. So Daimyo Shinobu, which is the first one that we are going to try, it's actually made by Shinobu Distillery. It's a new product that just came this summer to be more towards a highball, easy to drink everyday kind of whiskey. It's a blended product with barley and grains. It's very light, very delicious.
And Luana, just so a lot of us have 6 glasses in front of us. What's the order we're going to just put all of them in so we can?
So we're gonna do the Shinobu first. So it's gonna be Daimyo. Then we're doing Shinobu 10 years old. Then we're doing Shinobu 15.
Okay.
Then we go into Okinawa. So then we do Hayashi. And then we do Kujira, Inari, and Kujira 10 years old. That's the one we're finishing today.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are we ready to taste?
We're always ready to taste. Let's do it. Should
I
go grab some ice cold sparkling water and turn this into a highball?
You can, and you should, but I always recommend you to try it by itself first.
Okay.
And then, yes, absolutely, make a cocktail out of it. Think about it, for me, it's a very Californian kind of whiskey. I live here in Temecula, so it's really hot, especially in the summer. We are, always above 100 degrees. So, sometimes a very light whiskey by the pool sounds really good. So it became really popular in the summer. And you tasted with us when you met us. You can get a little bit of like toasted grains.
And you said what were the grains in this? Do you know the actual mash bill for this?
So you go with rice and barley.
Rice and barley. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. And are they using what's the starter for it? I know some Japanese whiskeys use gosh, what's it called?
Koji goes for Okinawa whiskey. Those are the next ones we are going to try.
Okay. So you said this was in the this Shinobu is the northern.
So Shinobu is in Niigata, yes.
Okay. So
So
we're
it's the
doing a
northern
journey
part
through
of
Japan. I like this.
Yeah, it's a journey through Japan. Jim, do you want to add anything to it?
I think you're nailing it. This was all about the idea behind this was to make something that was really easy drinking, pleasant, inexpensive, highballish whiskey. I think that one of the interesting things about and Luana, if I'm jumping ahead of what you want to talk about, just do
No,
like
go ahead.
do like one of those little direct chats and tell me the ST. Never mind. So Ken Usemi is the gentleman who started Shinobu, and his background is actually a brewer, and he had this dream then of building a distillery, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about how that project has now come to fruition. But what he's really known for is his blending skills, and one of the things that I always share in conversations like this is that obviously Japan has got a different approach to whiskey than America or Scotland or India, obviously. But one of the things that they're really known for and what they give high credence to is the blending. So here in the States, we always talk about the master distiller as the hero. In Japan, it's the master blender. And what's interesting, though, is when you talk to master distillers here, they talk about their blending and what they like to do when they blend. So as you taste through these, that's one of the things I'm sure that we'll get touched on is his approach to blending and how he's built the Shinobu brand. So I'll stop now.
By the way,
Somebody's
I don't know
trying to
if I missed it. Did you guys introduce yourselves and tell us who you are? Jim?
Oh, so Luana, I'm Luana's counterpart here in Northern California. I'm the regional manager for Northern California, overseeing, primarily focused in the Bay Area. I've been with CNS for about 4 years, and I've been in the industry a long time. I've done pretty much everything except for maybe drive the delivery truck. What's interesting about CNS is that the approach is all Asian spirits. The company's been owned by the Chen family since for over 40 years, and the idea has always been having close relationships with the brands that we import. So we import, and those were involved with other states, and here in California, we self-distribute as well.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome. Thanks for having me by. Anything
so
to drink some whiskey.
What is everyone's impression of this whiskey? I would like to know that.
I've seen a couple of comments in the chat.
I see somebody said liqueurs.
Licorice.
Remedy has it for 22. Yes, Remedy.
Okay, that's too low.
Remedy
we always joke
it,
about that.
I will put it link over here so you guys can get this product. Yeah, normally this is a product that is in the market for usually $24.99 to $29.99, depending where you go. Somebody just said Remedy has it 22, so that's pretty good. they might be running a promotion right now, so that's awesome. So we're talking about a $25 whiskey.
I will say for $25, this is really easy to drink, nice and sweet and delicious.
Yeah,
Much better than,
absolutely.
no offense, much better than I expected.
Yeah. I think it's much better than a lot of people's expectations. Again, as Jim mentioned, the master blender behind it is a celebrity in Japan. His art is really recognized, and the guy is just really great at doing his job. And I think even when you get a $25 Japanese whiskey, you're still getting an amazing product. So yeah, super easy to drink.
One of the flavor components that I get, and with my clientele, what they come with, is there's this interesting graininess, and not like in a in a dirty way, but I mean just in a that it could stand up to ginger ale cocktail, or anything that's in a highball glass. I mean, it really will stand up nicely, and it works for a lot of different palates. It's not trying to be overly one thing or another. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My brother would like to say hi to everybody, because he thinks what I do is pretty crazy, and so there.
All right. Are we moving to the next one, or how is everybody in there? Or everybody's just kind of like enjoying it?
I'm sipping it. You want to tell us the history of the distillery and all that?
Sure. So once again, Shinobu Distillery was, it's known for Mr. Osami, who first started with the brewery and then moved to whiskey, start blending many times, just bringing, barley from overseas, and then blending whiskeys mixed with the grains that they were able to produce in Japan, creating spectacular products. Until he got a bunch of awards and became a reference. Shinobu is definitely one of the reference of Japanese whiskeys. It's still remaining as a small company comparing to, the Suntory. Suntory is huge, so it's really big. So we can't really compare, like, something to Coca-Cola, for instance, right? So when we talk about other companies, we're talking about something really big. Suntory, Shinobu, Kujira, they are all very, Shinobu, Kujira, Hayashi, they are much smaller companies, just focusing in one type of product, such as those whiskeys. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Just to jump in here, I'm looking at some of these notes that y'all are putting on here. And Jane, you talk about cereal notes. That's classic. That's totally, that was one of the first terms that I remember hearing when we were all tasting this together when we brought it in. KNL 25, that's correct. Yeah, very nice. When we talk about blending, we're going to talk about the elephant that's in the room a little bit. So he started this distillery in 2017. And a lot of people that when they start a distillery, they can do, and they want to make whiskey. What do? They do one of two things. They make vodka and gin and make their money to keep the doors open, and then they release their whiskeys, or they do sourcing whiskeys and do blending. Whether here it's folks like MGP. We know that Whistle Pig started out as a sourced whiskey. We know that Templeton. I mean, there's so many that started out as sourced whiskeys, and so that's how he started his game. And he's had incredible sources. And again, to Luana's comment, his oak game is on point, and he's now released his first top to bottom his own milled, fermented, distilled, and bottled, which we're not touching on today, but maybe next visit. But what you'll see from him is this uniqueness where you'll recognize certain flavors that remind you of maybe domestic whiskeys or scotches or what have you, but there is something that's definitely different. And I think that's something really key to look at, especially when you get into some of his aged work. I think it's pretty cool. But like some of the other comments that I've read here, totally agree with your palettes on this. That it really is. I mean, I don't know where you guys are all over the country. Where is everybody from?
I'd say mostly LA, but we have people all over.
Okay, so I'm up here in the Bay Area, and it's been kind of rainy and a little cold, but I can still do this. There's no bad weather for a highball, right?
Yeah. So for full transparency, this is sourced juice
Oh,
for
yeah.
the most part.
Yeah.
And do you disclose what countries it's sourced from? Is this mostly?
Yep. I suppose it is. That's my joke. Is this one? I really don't know. I mean, the others I think will get some good hints. Luana, do you? They're kind of they're not secretive about it, but it's kind of like with those of us that follow the barrel game. When you hear about this is ex-bourbon barrel, and everybody's trying to guess: is it Dickel? Is it a here? Is it a there? Nobody ever says. They all have NDAs. Because let's say that I got a Dickel barrel and I made something and it was horrible, but I advertised it on all my trade swag, it would be terrible. So we don't know his sources. This one, man, does anybody got any guesses where you think it might be from? Some other things that we taste, you'll be able to guess, because I can tell this is a great palate group. But I mean, this tastes like something that he might have even sourced it like in country. I mean, it's because it doesn't taste like Scotland. It doesn't. I mean, it's barley.
Well, there's quite a bunch of quite a big chunk of rice. So rice is from Japan. So
so
yeah.
That's kind of my guess.
Yeah.
And again, no one's ever we can definitely talk about the new rules that about Japan that two companies have started to push, Yamazaki and Beam Suntory, now that they are able to do all their own stuff. And I love those companies, don't get me wrong, but it is kind of funny how you change your rules once you get to the level of being able to run them. Was that smack talk? Should I mute?
No. I mean, it's a real conversation, and that's what we want, right? We don't want fluff. We want to know the real story. So that I'm glad you brought it up, because we would have brought it up.
Oh, it's great. Well, real stories. Well, let me tell you something about Luana. So
let's move on.
All of a sudden, there's a bad network connection, and he's getting
going through a tunnel. Wait a minute, you're sitting in your house.
Let's move on to the next one.
Perfect. I just poured it. Let's go into the
next
10 years.
one. The 10 years lightly peated. This is actually from the Shinobu distillery. This is my personal favorite. I know not a lot of people love peated whiskey. This one is lightly peated, and I think it's just the perfection of the amount of peatiness for my personal taste. I love the complexity that you get on this one. So it's basically a 9 years old aged whiskey in bourbon barrels, and then a year in Mizunara oak. So if you never taste anything with Mizunara, Mizunara brings that sort of oiliness to the whiskey. A little bit of sandalwood. It's something that I find in every whiskey that is finished in Mizunara. So a year is just usually about the maximum you go. You go a few months to a year. You don't age the entire process in Mizunara because it would be just a little too much. It's a very powerful wood flavor to the whiskey, but also bringing all this oiliness to it. So it makes it really smooth. And I think that combination with a little bit of peatness is just really, really delicious. This is a pure malt product. So yes, just barley, no blend, no rice, no corn. Couple of gold medals in this product. And what else?
You said this is 100% barley, so is it malted,
this is
unmalted,
malt,
or just?
Yes.
It's pure malt.
Yeah.
It's a pure malt, so it's all malted barley.
All malted barley. Yeah, I know in Scotland, pure malt can be a combination. It can be their single grain is pure malt.
Hmm.
So there are different definitions of the phrase pure malt. So just making sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
I just love the complexity that you get on the nose of this product. So
What?
you get just
Kate's
tiny
enjoying
little-
this one? Kate hates Pete. What? That's impossible.
Who's enjoying it? Let me see. Let me
There you
post a
go.
message.
Mm.
Yeah, it definitely has a very distinctive wood, spicy, as Amanda just mentioned. And that's something you always taste in those products, normally from Niigata. Again, has a similar climate to the UK, with that special finish that you can't get anywhere else. And I think the use of Mizunara is really what made Japanese whiskey so popular everywhere, because people little by little kind of like got addicted to that finish. And sometimes people don't even know what it is, but that's really what it is the Mizunara in it. Is anybody in the group that usually hates peated whiskeys?
Where do you source the peat for this? Are you having it malted in Scotland? Are you malting it yourself?
So
I'm curious what you're using to.
it's mostly
Okay.
sourced, yeah, and blended. So sourced and blended and finished in Japan. So it follows the same rule for all Shinobu products, except for the new one that they just brought in. So sourced, blended, and finished. So the aging process, everything happens in Japan, especially the finish and the blending, which is a art. A lot of times people are so much worried about where you actually distill the product and get the liquid, which for the Japanese can be the least important thing, because the blending, the capacity of blending correctly a product and finishing a product is what really brings the product to life, rather than just thinking about where you brew and how you work the product. How you work the product is a lot more important for the mentality over there, in that sense, in cultures like Shinobu and some other distilleries in the north of Japan.
Cool. So I guess I'm kind of curious then, are you malting just the barley? Are you also malting the rice?
So right now we're talking about pure malt whiskey.
Oh,
So
so
there's
it's
no
just
rice
pure
on
malt?
this one. It's
Okay.
pure malt. Yeah. And we
That-
will
that
talk
makes
about
more
rice.
sense.
Most of the rice products in Japan are actually coming from Japan, because
Mhm.
Japan has no problem in having rice. So it's coming from Japan.
No, I
Sometimes
actually
the
like
rice
rice
comes from
whiskey. That's why I
elsewhere.
wondered if it actually had any in it, because I missed that first part because I was.
Yeah, no, this one is a
annoyed by
pure
the
malt
dog.
whiskey. So it's just, yeah. It's just
Cool. Thank you.
Jim, you want to say anything?
I did raise my hand about the peat piece, because I always believe that I'd rather smoke my cigar than drink it. And that being said, I appreciate the balance of this. I appreciate that. I've drunk my fair share of peated whiskeys, and I like the Mizunara piece coming in with it. I think it's an interesting spice that I don't want to say fights peat in a different way, but I don't know. I just it's a different little smoky fire.
Mhm.
As far as the question was asked about how it gets peated, again, because this is sourced, we don't know all the details. We know that we all know the process of how peat works, and how with malted with barley, with malted barley. But I think where these kind of come into play, the Shinobus are again about his blending, about the use of Mizunara. love to talk about Mizunara. Love to hear what you all think about Mizunara. If you have opinions about Mizunara, one of the interesting things about it is for a long time there were a number of independent coopers that were getting a hold of Mizunara oak and making great barrels. And over the course of time, two rather large companies that I mentioned earlier bought up basically all the cooperages, and there's only like one or two independent coopers making Mizunara barrels now in Japan. And at one point, and this is before Luana was here, we were talking about maybe getting a hold of a couple of Mizunara barrels and then aging some. I have a friend who's a distiller up in Washington, has a little distillery up there, and doing some domestic whiskeys, aging in Mizunara. And so we looked in Mizunara is an expensive barrel, and we basically got told, no, you can't. You just can't. Don't even try. You can't get one. So like if all of us decided we wanted to get a Mizunara barrel, we'd have a better chance of, I don't know, anything else. So it's unfortunate because when somebody starts to isolate this barrel and makes it harder, these are not necessarily new Mizunara barrels. They're first and second fills, some of them, and after a while you can only repair and refresh a barrel so many times, and that stave starts getting to be about the size of a piece of paper, right? So I hope I don't sound like I'm complaining about anybody big, because then you might see me someday working for someone that's that big and go, I thought you didn't like these guys, and then I get fired. But I'm not leaving. So and have you all tasted a lot of whiskeys with Mizunara oak finished in Miz, or okay? So is this leaning into? Oh, actually, step back. Do you know if they were sourced whiskeys or if they were like milk, top to bottom made by the producer? I'll take it as I'm not sure.
We've had a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I know for myself, and I don't want to speak for everyone in the group. For us, it's about transparency more than whether you made the product or not. It's
Yeah. No, I mean,
sourcing and blending is an art. Nothing wrong with it as long as you're transparent and upfront about it. So,
there's I'll actually, we'll save this story for later. We can move ahead.
All right, what are people thinking of this on this lightly peated 10-year-old? That's quite a complex bouquet of flavors on this one.
It's really good. I like this. I could imagine myself buying this bottle.
Wow.
Yeah, that's big. So, but it's so well balanced, and it's got that interesting, the sandalwood from the Mizunara, and it's got some of the spicy notes in it that I like. I mean, this is really just really wonderful. The peat doesn't really detract from it like it usually does for me.
Yeah, it's definitely not a swampy or an iodine peat by any means. It's nice. It's not even, I would say, not even ashy. It's like a nice mellow peat.
And
Right.
it's not
It's
overwhelming.
hard to
It doesn't-
identify which peated distillery this is from,
Right?
because it's not like any of the others.
It tastes maybe like a Highland. It's got to be mainland, maybe.
Maybe more like a Highland peat,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. And Jim,
It's
do you
not
know?
from Isla.
Huh?
It's not from Isla.
It doesn't taste
From
like it for
elsewhere.
sure. Do you know if so? The company was established in 2017, right? So this obviously wasn't aged for 10 years in Japan. Are these at least bottled in Japan, or what's the process on this?
Yeah, so he finishes them, like he does his blends and his finishes in the Mizunara in Japan,
Okay.
and then does his bottling there. Yeah.
And my understanding of Mizunara oak, from what we've learned so far, is it's very potent. It's kind of like Garyana, where you don't need a long time to impart flavor.
Yep.
Do you know how long he finishes it for?
I think, Luana, I think you touched on it.
This one
when
is
you did it.
finished for a year.
1 year.
Oh, for a year in Mizunara.
For 1 year in Mizunara. So it's 9 years aged. and then 1 year finished in Mizunara.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, it looks like on the description it's ex-bourbon and ex-sherry casks, so that's
Mhm.
kind of where the sweetness comes from. That's a beautiful marriage. It's really nice.
I love that you mentioned Gariana, because that's a very distinctive. I feel like I'm like at the sawmill if there's too much of that, right? So
Yeah, whenever I think those are the two oaks that I think of that are hard to find, hard to work with, like very, very limited oaks. Obviously not as limited as Mizunara, but yeah, the one thing that I've learned about Mizunara in the past is that not only does it take forever to age and blah blah, but also it leaks like crazy. So it's expensive to try to age in it to begin with.
but it's certainly good stuff. So we go through all the trouble, right?
Yep. Did we compare this side by side with the 15? What do you think?
Well, it's a little unfair in the sense that the 15 is not pitted at all. The 15 years old is in 2020 got 100 points. So
What?
normally Jim and I, we don't talk much about this product because 100 points, we don't have to say anything. So we got several gold medals and a bunch of awards. Again, it's 1 year finished in Mizunara, 15 years old. Just very, very, very smooth, very delicious. Yeah, I don't want to talk much about this one.
Fine, Jim, talk about it.
No, we don't talk about this one because it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I got 100 points. What are we gonna say?
Tell us all about it.
So that tasting, there's a magazine called Food and Beverage Magazine, and they put this judging on every year called the Proof Awards. You all seen that? PR and then the percentage sign F. That's kind of clever with the percent. And the judges are kind of a who's who in restaurant, beverage directors, other distillers, etc. And what was interesting about it is not only did it get 100, it was unanimous from all the judges. And I thought that was like, that doesn't happen. There's always somebody that likes chicken better and just doesn't think this is the thing. But I think y'all kind of were talking about where you thought the sources might have been from. I think this one might be, I don't want to say easier, but maybe have some ideas on what the source might be or sources area wise.
I think I know where this is from, but I will not say the name of the distillery. So,
Tell us.
but it's one of my favorites.
Oh, it's from Shinobu. Great.
Exactly. So what does Shinobu do to this? It's blending. I understand that, but is it finishing it in any type of wood in particular? What else is Shinobu doing?
It's finished in Mizunara oak. So the blending thing that you already got it. And then the finishing in Mizunara. What kind of Mizunara? How aged the Mizunara is, how much used the Mizunara is, the kind of Mizunara. There are a little bit, there are different kinds of Mizunaras. Not all one Mizunara oak serves everything. The price for this barrel can vary anything from $6,000 to $12,000. It's a very crazy expensive wood. And how much you leave in there and in which condition, it's already a very important thing. So what he does is blend and finish. So this one, the 15, is about a year in Mizunara. And yeah.
One other thing is when we talk about sourcing, it's not necessarily from one place. So that's what makes it kind of, it's more than just he bought, 50 barrels of whiskey from Lagavulin that they weren't going to use, and then he had it shipped over, and then he threw it in some Mizunara for a few minutes, and then Bob's your uncle. It's it's more about finding sources that he thinks will come together. And that, when we say blending, it's really y'all make infinity barrels or infinity bottles, right?
Oh God, don't get Jason started.
So Jason, let's talk about that.
He's just getting my goat on that one. That's an inside joke that only he's laughing at right now.
But it's almost, well, it's not quite as that, infinity barrel kind of stuff, but it's it's chefs. It's like they have all the spice rack, and he's got all these barrels of whiskey, different ages. He's got 10-year, and remember that in his case, that designation of 10 is whatever is the youngest. He may have some stuff that's older. We'll talk about that a little bit with Kujira later. So it's kind. I know it sounds kind of vaguey again, but it's like that's just kind of his approach. He's sort of a mad scientist.
So if you said 50 barrels, so I'm just going to stick to that. So if he blends 50 barrels, does he do the second barreling after the blending, or is it he dumps it in the second barrel and then blend?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I have experiential answers and I have guessing answers. And I just, in Luana, God, jump in and save me. No, okay. No.
I'm fine with I don't know, but guessing or telling me something just for me to hear it, I'd rather just.
Oh no.
I don't know.
No. I'm with you on that. But the assumption that I have in conversations on this product and how this is made is he does do his blend, and then he finishes that blend in Mizunara oak. So it's not like, to your point, he didn't buy 50 different barrels and then put 50 different barrels into 50 different Mizunara barrels and then blend it. He did his blend probably, and for all we know, and I see a field trip coming, is that he maybe throwing them in neutral barrels, maybe throw them in stainless. I mean, who knows? This guy's crazy. But jump.
No, I just wanted to bring to people's attention on one thing. Like when we talk about a master blender who, where his job is taken really serious, he got awards, there's competitions. He's like a chef of a very important restaurant, Michelin stars, whatever. He doesn't share his recipes. He doesn't go around and about to say, hey, I sourced this whiskey from this place, because that's his secret, is the recipe of his success. So where he sources the product, how he goes about, what is the percentage, all of that, it's part of the recipe of his amazing product. He doesn't really share this. So it's not like when you're going for something like the next products, they are from Okinawa, they are produced 100% in Japan. So we know about the whole story behind producing, making the product there, aging there, yada yada yada, because that's it's not that the other product, that this product is not transparent, but it's a different type of art, is the blending type of art, and therefore there's a lot more secrets involving this blending, because it is the whole deal is how does he get to this flavor. That's what it is. So it's not so much about where the product, the source product comes from, but how does he make it so amazing. So I like to bring to this attention to this, because it's a completely different experience. Trying a product that is blended and created with an art than just this comes from this place and then taste this way, and you're looking for something that has already its profile due to the region and how you produced.
Somebody made a comment about doing the little water drop and having it loosen up, and I love doing that. And I don't know if everybody's throwing a little water on these too, just to see what happens. But yeah, they just get they get kind of loosened up, you know.
So I mean, all of these have been fantastic. And I did notice that it's very common in Japanese whiskey to keep the alcohol by volume pretty low. We're looking at 40, 43. Is that just classic because the Japanese culture likes their whiskey a little, you know, the highball, all that? They're just not big fans of cask strength, or what's the deal?
I'll jump in on one comment to that, which I agree with you that they generally do, sit in that, low 40s kind of number, percentage wise. And I've always thought that it was more about that, going after the prettiness as opposed to the boldness. And then, it's too bad that we're not tasting it, but it hadn't really come out when you guys were organizing this. His first bottling of his own whiskey called Newborn is 50%. And that was
Sounds like you're laying. I'm picking up what you're laying down. All right, part 2 coming. I got you.
I mean, it's just, again, he's doing his own thing. And I just thought it was funny when, we're tasting it and I'm just like, wow, this is pretty big. And I'm like, maybe it's because I'm used to his, 40%, 43%. And then I'm like, whoa, 50? But I think it's stylistic. I think it's kind of, and not to put it in a cultural sense, but again, we work with a distillery out of Taiwan. There's the Nantao distillery. And when we tasted with them, just to veer off for a second, they, I'm used to flavors that just are there and like really easy to pick up, and because they're big and bold and what have you. And then it's like, and I was kind of missing it for a second. And then, I slowed down, and which is hard for me to do. And this prettiness came out. And that's one of the things I love bourbon. I don't usually use the word pretty with bourbon. I'm not that they're pretty, but it's, this kind of pretty. So I think that sort of, I hope I'm answering your question in that my experience has been that it's more about culturally stylistic, subtleties of certain flavors. I mean, in food, obviously there's big food flavors too, but think about like in sushi, like those little dabs of this and that change the whole flavor of a piece of fish. Maybe that's just their approach.
Our sushi monger is not here tonight. I think he's on a plane back from a trip, but he'd tell you all about sushi. He has sushi everywhere in the States.
Oh man, I'm hungry now and I'm not hungry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who was smart enough to bring Japanese food to go along with this? Raise your hand. Tell me you won tonight. I failed.
But for whomever was the one suggesting the water, thanks for reminding me. I just tried the water in both of the last two, and a tiny bit of water in the 10-year, to me, brought out salinity in the peat. But when you add more water to the peat, it balances back out, and it's good. This one, the 15, a little bit of water seemed to make it spicier. So I'm curious to hear what other people found when they added water. But it didn't, but by the way, the adding a little bit of water to the 15 didn't detract from the wonderful flavors and balance of it, but it brought out a little bit more spiciness. Nobody? Okay.
You're totally spot on. I remember the first time I ever experienced the drop of water it was a Bruichladdich with and I'm blanking on his name, but one of the partners, Jim, whatever his last name is, you all know who it is.
McEwen.
Thank you. Sorry, blanked. Lovely man, and just said, he goes, so you don't really like, and that was my wine era of my life. I was a Bordeaux import guy, and worked with a distributor that had these wonderful whiskeys, and he says, well, just try this, and he pulled out the golden dropper and just blip, and yeah, life-changing. And it's amazing to do that. And you can even, I don't know, man, do you ever like just look at it and just watch that drop just kind of spread out in your glass? I mean, it's cool, right? So
are we ready to move to travel south? Are we ready for that?
Yep, do it.
I'm gonna need another hour and a half on this 15. Just gonna sip it long.
So
Can we stop
traveling
off for a little ramen on the way?
dang it.
So traveling down to Okinawa to Ryukyu Islands, that's where we're going to stay now for the rest of the journey. We're going to start it off with Hayashi. So this is the no age statement. So this is our entry level Hayashi. Hayashi's Koyo, and then we have 8 years old and 24 years old, which is a very limited production. Ryukyu Island is very, very small. So the production of all those products, Hayashi and Kujira, which will be the next ones that we are going to try, they are always very, very limited production because everything is very small. We're talking about now subtropical climate, so maturation happens much faster. And now we are talking about a product that is 100% produced in Japan, aged in Japan, bottled in Japan, 100% rice whiskey made from indica rice, fermented with koji, and then distilled. So the way the process is a very old process of a tradition in Japan. So Hayashi and Kujira are part of Japanese tradition. You make something that in Japan is called amori. So it's basically just fermented rice with koji and then distilled and then aged in barrels. So the difference pretty much between Hayashi line and Kujira is how they selected the barrels and what kind of barrels they're using to age the products. But the product is made from rice, indica rice, the long grain indica rice, fermented with koji, and then distilled and aged in barrels. So Hayashi is aged in bourbon casks. So you get a little bit of that sweetness from bourbon. It's a very delicious product, entry level again, beautiful toffee notes. So more towards that sweetness of bourbon with already, the rice whiskey already brings that characteristic, more sweet, more towards a palate of people that enjoy bourbon more than Scotch, I would say. Jim, do you want to add anything?
Chug, chug, chug. Jason, very good. So yeah, the history of distilling on the island of Okinawa is pretty interesting. They make a spirit called awamori, which alluded to as a rice spirit. It's clear. It's aged in clay pots, amphora pots, and they've been making it for hundreds of years. And as legend has it, about 50 years ago, somebody took a bourbon barrel and said, hey, let's dump some of this in here and see what it tastes like. And that's the start of the whiskey industry on the island of Okinawa. There, in the beginning of Kujira, well, we'll talk about Kujira when we get there. With Hayashi, it's like Luana said, it's very select barrels. The Koyo is probably about 3-year-old, 2 to 3, I think 3-ish years. But again, we're talking about a very tropical climate. So that angel share that normally we talk about 4% ish on a barrel, this is probably sitting at 8%. So that kind of accelerates the aging process. And then again, I wished you all had like the bottle, because you guys got sample vials. That's how it is, right? You don't. Yeah, the bottle. The bottle's really cool. I mean, there's all these interesting, Japanese characters. Everything means something. Koyo, and up on the neck too. I love, like, it's kind of hard to see, but there's some really cool. And I've been trying to. I don't speak Japanese, so I want to get somebody to do that for me. Probably says tastes great with chicken. But the like koyo, isn't that the term for
Falling leaves.
Yeah, thank you. And then Hayashi, I thought it was a term that meant like when the trees are coming through the fog kind of stuff, but I'm not quite certain of that.
If you're not familiar with rice whiskey, one of the things that you probably get first and you're like, oh, it smells slightly like sake. So yes, it does. The rice, you can really smell it in rice whiskey. It's not something that is subtle that you don't smell right away. So you get right away that chunk of rice pudding, I think, is the first thing that I eat with koyo. And that goes along with all the rice whiskeys.
I'm really having trouble trying to wrap my head around this one. This is so different. I haven't had a rice whiskey before, and this is aged, like you said, in the bourbon barrels. So I can taste some of that bourbon, but I can't wrap my head around what I'm tasting otherwise. And I'm looking at other people's tasting notes, and nothing is striking me as, yeah, that's what I'm tasting. So I'm just curious, what are other people tasting out there, and what are their reactions?
I think the first thing for me when I put this on my palate, on the nose, I was trying to wrap my brain around it. But the first thing I thought of, right, and everybody's palate is associations with what you've tried. Last night I bought some prosciutto, and it was like a sweet saltiness on like a salty pork product. That was the first tasting note that I picked up on this, was like a thinly sliced prosciutto, kind of velvety, salty, and sweet at the same time, kind of umami. But yeah, this is definitely different. And I think the whole concept of rice whiskey is a whole rabbit hole of a conversation, right? Because by law here we would consider rice whiskey a whiskey. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim or Luana, in Japan, we wouldn't consider rice whiskey a whiskey, but we would, right?
Yeah.
In Japan, they could call awamori or aged awamori.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be considered a whiskey. And then this is a conversation I've had in the whiskey circles before, where it's like, well, I had a friend who was like, well, I don't accept rice whiskey as a whiskey. And I was like, well, but here it is whiskey. By our laws, it is.
The international definition of whiskey is grain product distilled and aged in barrels. That's the definition of whiskey internationally. So once people came across awamori, it's like, well, that's actually whiskey. They might call their aged awamori, which is quite different from the fresh awamori, which is completely clear color. And so the aged awamori got this whole, and it was just easier for the rest of the world to understand what the product actually is. And again, it has a very distinguished taste. I see how some people are having like a hard time really you kind of like have to go towards sake, and then you think about sake first, and then you travel around sake, and you get all those beauties of sake, and then you distill that sake, and then you age it a little bit, and you get a little bit more. It's a lot of complexities, but always kind of like going first to sake, because you're really making sake first and then distilling it, isn't it?
Amanda, you and Lori are big sake drinkers, right? And I know Jane was for a while. Do you get sake notes on this?
A little bit, but that wouldn't be the first note that I would name.
Yeah, so I'm all for innovation, right? Like Nobody ever tried Mizunara oak until somebody tried Mizunara oak. So I'm all for it. And I'm not gonna foo-foo a rice whiskey. It's just wrapping your brain around it. And like I love the idea of it, right? Just like with American single malts, I may not like the flavor of an American single malt in a virgin American oak cask, but I don't say that's wrong because bourbon drinkers tend to love that, right? So that's where me and like Jordan disagree 100%. The moment they put it in a virgin American cask, he loves it, and I'm like, blah. Yeah.
But you know, Jane has, first of all, Luana, you nailed it. That was the thing I was missing. Sake. I don't know why I didn't think of that right away. But anyway, but thank you. You put the puzzles together. And then Jane wrote this very interesting stuff here in the chat. And yeah, it's like somebody, yeah, they put a sake in a rice in a bourbon barrel, and you get this very interesting complex exchange of flavors. It's really interesting. I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around it, but I'm not hating it, right? It's just not what I gotta get used to it. Gotta recalibrate.
Drinking rice whiskey is like eating sushi for the first time. You don't like it right away, maybe, and it grows on you, right? Because it's a whole different, profiles and tastes, and it's a whole different world. So I think rice whiskey, it's a whole different world. And for me, since I taste it and since now I work with, I would always go towards rice whiskey rather than regular whiskeys, really. It just grew in me, it's just like sushi. It just grows in
This is one I really want to let sit for a little bit and get some air into it and come back into it like in like 20 minutes and see what's happened to it.
So just a real quick jump in, 2 points. One is what we haven't really talked about much is the black koji. So there's 3 kojis that we know of. I mean, we are used to white, yellow, and black. We use them like in soy sauce. Koji is a soy sauce additive, and so there's a resonance to that flavor. And in fact, I had a meeting today with a gentleman who is a beverage director of a very high-end restaurant here in the Bay Area, and didn't have a lot of experience with Japanese whiskey in general, surprisingly, but really with rice whiskey. And so there's a lot of rice whiskeys out there. Fukano, there's some, I think there's some bottlings that Kukori did. But this idea of using black koji adds this different resonance that, to your point, Amanda, sorry, I blanked, but I see your name now, is this, when you take this glass and you smell this in 20 minutes after not futzing around with it, there is a nose in this that is like, it's like toffee and caramel and this other thing that is the black koji. And when you taste these, there is, I use this analogy now and again, where there's a resonance to, and you'll see it even more so when you get into Kujira. So think about this when we taste those, is there's a resonance, which is, I think of it as a sound. So, when you're listening to the cello and there's the note, but if you're really close to it, the bow across the metal wound string has this kind of buzzy sound. Or like when you listen to singers and you hear Celine Dion, who's got this pure voice of just note, and then Ray Charles, who has that pure note, but all that other stuff around it. That's what you get with this black koji, is this resonance. And I hate to use the word never, but I don't think I've ever made a cocktail with Kujira or Hayashi. I've always drunk them neat or with a cube. And I'm curious to see what you guys think when we move on to those, especially with some bottle age on them, or barrel age, pardon me.
I was going to say, for the sake of the people who are watching this later and don't get to read the chat, my comment about cream of rice cereal, it was something that we had a lot when I was a kid in a cold winter morning breakfast. And that porridge note is what I associate with rice whiskeys. I've had a few before, and the first one I had was kind of like getting smacked upside the head. because I'm like, what the hell is this? This is awesome, but it's just not whiskey. Wait a minute, maybe it is. So I kind of went back and forth, but it's kind of like you take something porridgey like a cream of rice cereal, but rather than putting in butter and maple syrup or brown sugar like we used to do when nobody cared about calories, it's white miso paste and maybe nori flakes, a little bit of honey and butter. You know, it's got these weird little notes in it that it just, I mean, this is just delicious. And I think that this was also a Mizunara finish.
No,
No, okay. So it doesn't, because I was gonna say, because it doesn't have that little spiky wood note to it that I was sort of thinking it would have if it had been. So I think this is just amazingly fantastic, and I'm completely happy with it. I don't want to go on.
All the rice whiskeys are normally finished in bourbon cask or white oak, same oak, virgin white oak. It's much more delicate product than when we talk about barley. So you don't want to overpower with cask. So there's no, I have not seen it. I don't think there's ever a Mizunara oak on the rice whiskeys. So it's a lot more delicate.
Yeah, that does make more sense, because I was like, God, you just blow the taste right out with that. I just thought this was fascinating because it's kind of like, you know, that morning hug of something warm and toasty after you've been forced to go out and dig out the car seat and go to school.
We know what Jane's going to be drinking in her tea tomorrow morning with her porridge.
I'm really, by the way, really enjoying y'all's tasting notes and comments. I mean, you know, and our day-to-day job is, there isn't this time to like really sit necessarily with you know, with a buyer and get that deep. You know, when we do, it's really special. So just wanted to share that.
How is everybody feeling about this one? Should we move forward? I don't hear anybody saying anything anymore.
I'm gonna save this for later nosing. The umami on this is really, it's just interesting. It's fascinating to come back to it. And I can't match Jane's poetry.
I want to
Vadim.
I want to tell you that I cheated and I already moved on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, but the reason I'm saying it is because the first one, kind of the one I was having trouble wrapping my head around, right? It sort of tuned my taste buds, and I think I'm ready for the next two.
Okay.
And like Vadim, I'm gonna come back to this one, you know, the one that we were
Right.
just tasting. So I also had a question. Luana, where are you located?
So we are in, our company is in Pico Rivera.
So you're in the LA area?
I am in the LA area, yes.
Okay, because it looks like you have natural light coming from outside, but no. That's just my imagination.
I'm actually in Temecula. I live in Temecula. So I'm a little bit south of LA.
That's right. You mentioned that.
It just has fancy lighting because, you know.
It's just fancy lighting. Yes. I got a lighting coming from the window, so it looks like I have a little bit of sunshine.
Yeah, you look like you have natural lighting too, so.
Oh, thank you. So moving
natural
to
light
Kujira.
bulb.
Vadim, take the photo.
Kujira.
You're right.
I love to talk about Kujira, because Kujira is a brand that is actually really part of Japanese heritage. It's part of Japanese history. I just recently found a documentary at History Channel, which I thought was amazing, about Kujira. They are from 1883, so it's one of the oldest distillery in Japan, definitely the oldest in Okinawa. So they're pretty much the ones that started the whole business with aged Awamori / whiskey, Japanese whiskeys, rice whiskey. They have a long history. They are known for producing products that are very limited. So there's even like, you know, when Kujira launches a Kujira 25, we sell in, you know, few hours, and then that's it. So it's a collectible item for a lot of consumers. because they know once Kujira 25 is finished, they're not going to find a Kujira 25 for the next 15, 20 years, you know. So it's a product that made people like very interested in that collectible kind of limited production. Delicious products, of course, most of the time aged in white virgin white oak. And then some of the aged one goes to sherry cask or bourbon cask. But they have a tendency to go virgin white oak, because as I said, it's a very delicate product. Kujira means whale. So again, they're Okinawa, Ryukyu Island, surrounded by sea. So you're always going to find the whale. A lot of people go like, I want one of the whale whiskeys. That's what it is. The whale is because Kujira means whale. What else? This one, the Inari that you guys are going to try right now, is the entry level of the Kujira. At this moment, Kujira goes up to 25 years old. There's still some bottles somewhere of Kujira 25. So you go to Kujira Inari, no age statement, around 3 years. It's a blend of different vintages, really. Not a blended of different liquids from different products, but rather a blend of different vintages. So you might have a 30 years old here, a splash of 30 years old here. So you go all the way to 25. So right now we're going to try the Kujira Inari and then Kujira 10, but there's also Kujira 5, and Kujira 15 and Kujira 25. They used to be Kujira 8, 12, and 20. Those are gone. Again, collectible items that you might find still, like a bottle here or there, but they are very highly appreciated products. So
That's one of the best sounds. That ba-dunk.
boom.
Love that.
So I think for an entry level, one of the things that is more interesting about this product is that, yes, you get that rice, sake, soy sauce, a little bit of it, but you also get a little bit of a spiciness and kind of like a kick in it. So I think for a entry Kujira, entry rice whiskey, this might be more appropriated even than the Hayashi Koyo, although Hayashi Koyo might be a little bit sweeter. So you still get the same kind of idea, tropical notes, tropical fruits from the region. You still get a little bit of spiciness, a little bit of apple, and all this long finish of sweetness, rice pudding, breakfast for some of you.
It still has that rice sweetness, kind of like a sour note on the back end. It's interesting. On the nose, it was very different. It was very floral, like Tony said. But it's
very floral. A lot of tropical fruits. A little bit of caramel, just like Hayashi had a little bit of toffee. But I think this one has a little bit more, since Hayashi is in ex-bourbon cask aged, this one in white, virgin white oak. So the complexity of the rice itself, how it evolves, it's a lot more pronounced than with the influence of the bourbon. So it's very much like what a rice whiskey is, pure rice whiskey, with no interference, really, no. So you get a little bit of that kick of spiciness, but a very long finish. And then little by little, the riciness of it, like that resemblance of sake, kind of like dilutes a little bit. You get more pronounced pepper notes. Yeah, that's how I see what people are saying. We are under Inari, Jane, yes.
I'm curious to hear what Pappy Anderson thinks on this one. Calling him out.
I want to hear a flute solo, man. Come on.
Fair enough. I agree. That was my tasting note too.
What did he say?
Yeah.
I see.
That was what episode of? Never mind. That was a.
I am kind of curious to see what people would compare Hayashi Koyo to Kujira 90 because those two are true entry level Okinawa whiskey. And I know some people prefer Inari, some people prefer Koyu.
So I think I prefer this to the other, but it's hard because I tasted the other one first.
Uh-huh.
And remember, I was having trouble wrapping my head around that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's a fair comparison, which is why I'm going to go back and retaste that. But not this moment. I'll wait a little while. But yeah, and this one, it was, it's a more direct connection. Like I definitely taste the sake kind of thing. Where the other one, it wasn't so clear until you said it. I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what it is. Yeah. This one, it was more clear from the beginning. But again, I don't know how much of that is just in my head.
No, I think you're right. It does, because it's a virgin white oak. There's no influence of the sweetness of the bourbon. So in Koyu, you get a little bit more caramel to it. And the caramel can be a little bit overpowering sometimes to the subtle notes of the rice whiskey. Rather than this one, you get a lot more of the big sense of what a rice whiskey is. And it's, of course, it's not very aged, around 3 years old. So it's still very refreshing, very young, a lot going on. And the tendency when you age the rice whiskeys to become a little bit more, a little sweeter, a little more caramel, a little bit more like towards Christmas, I would say. It's more like a Christmas kind of drink. When you go Kujira 15, 25, there's a lot more caramel, a lot more going on in terms of winter notes, Christmas notes. That's how I feel it.
So I literally tasted them side by side, and I'm glad I did that because I can now understand the rice whiskey note, because in the middle and the finish they were very, very similar. Like now I know this is what rice is. They're different, but like now I have that like sweet sourness kind of thing.
Yeah.
The Inari is more floral and fruity for me, and I can't wait to put that in a highball. I feel like that would be really good in a highball.
Inari is much more of a junmai sake for me. It has that earthiness to it. The floral kind of plays into it that I would expect to go with a junmai. It's definitely not like junmai ginjo. It's definitely junmai, but it's just amazing how the character, it's like it just kind of flips it a little bit. It's not sake, but it is so reminiscent of it. I can see why people would compare it.
And this goes into a new barrel, unaged barrel.
Yes, new barrel, unaged barrel. Yes. Yeah, this one and the next one will also be new barrel. The next one we are trying is a 10 years old in new barrels.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Before we move on, or as we move on to our last pour, Wes, come back. Stop hiding off camera. All the kids want to see Santa. There you go. I invite everyone to raise a glass and say cheers to CNS, Luana, and Jim, and all these wonderful Japanese brands that we're tasting tonight. Jim's going to raise a whole carafe. You know, we're not here to judge. But I do want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and look at the camera and smile. Cheers.
Cheers.
Beautiful. Oh, that's a great shot. Awesome.
Okay, I haven't tasted this one yet. I didn't go ahead and cheat, but the nose on this, I mean, I can smell it from this far away. I don't have to stick my nose in the glass. It's powerful. Anybody else?
So I have not even moved yet to the 10, but let's go to the 10. 10 years old in virgin white oak, double gold medal. Very delicious product. I think a lot of
lots of leather on that.
Plum wine.
You get a little bit more oak on this one that you get, of course, in the Inari. It's quite pronounced. Again, it's a virgin white oak, so you get a little bit more of that without the interference of an ex-bourbon or ex-sherry cask. Lots of brown sugar when you compare to Inari that has all the spiciness and the youngness of when you go to a 10 years old, and you get a little bit more of the brown sugar caramel notes. So that's the tendency of Japanese rice whiskey. As they age, it becomes a little sweeter, a little bit more towards dessert, a lot more candied. Although this one does have that candid profile when you smell it, I think when you taste it, it gets a little bit of the spiciness, and then it's very controversial, and it actually becomes really delicious. Yeah, a little butter in it, isn't it?
Yeah, I can see what you say about Christmas. Yeah, that clicks for me. Yeah.
I want to soak a cake in it.
It's just, yeah, this is just delicious. It's like, for me, it's like fall, Christmas, all those beautiful spicy notes, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, all that. A little sweet, so really good for, you know, a little cold climate. Jim is in Northern California, so he's already in that mood.
Telling you.
Did someone say they want to soak a Kate in it?
Yeah.
Cake.
That
That
dessert
cake.
to be
Cake.
super sure.
I didn't say Kate. Although-
Kate looks like she's not gonna mind.
Kate would probably be okay with it, except for the waist. Like,
What waste? She's gonna absorb it.
yeah,
She's
this
gonna soak it in.
is so interesting because the nose for me right off the bat, it was like plum wine, and you know, just the flower and that little hint of the woodiness from the virgin oak. But the palate is completely different. It's got that fruity note without, sorry. It's got that fruity note that is just so completely different. It's really fascinating. I mean, I would totally wear this as perfume.
It's funny you would say that, because I was talking to somebody about that idea of the scent, the cologne of it. And I saw somebody earlier, was it? Yeah, it was James. You did a little bit of that. You rubbed it up, and that I've done that. And it's like, you know, you'd still get pulled over, but you could say that it was like cologne. That's, and what's been interesting is listening to y'all, like, you know, you stepped into rice whiskey with a lot of to now you're like, I mean, I'm not saying that we hooked you, but it's neat to see that, like in anything that's new, and now that you're getting these flavors and you're seeing them more pronounced with more age, etc. I think that's really fun.
Yes, and also because, again, I think when rice whiskey is aged, it evolves with all those complex sort of spices that we usually associate to winter and Christmas and all that. And the complexity is much higher, and it's just very brilliant. So you can't, you know, the first time you're like, what is this going on with all these rice flavors that I never tried in my life? And then suddenly you go like, okay, I passed that. Now I'm like, oh, wow, it's a lot going on here. This is delicious. This has a lot. So that's where we are now at 10 years old. Imagine if we had been trying to 15 or 25.
Well, it's funny. I actually want to know what are the differences with the 12 and the 15, and because somebody just sent out a link and they're available.
Lucky for you, there's a 30-year-old on sale in that link. Go ahead and pick one up.
You know what, for me, the differences in all of those is really more about barreling. So like the 12-year, if you like sherry cask and you like brighter notes, then that's going to be your play. If you like the 20-year, I always liked that. It definitely was a bourbon barrel that was, you know, just exuded like that like in an old Cabernet bottle, when there's that little bit of seepage, and you got to taste it, right? And it's kind of like got that sweet yet, like, I don't know, tarry note to it that had a little bit of that. It was definitely a darker flavor. My favorite one so far, and if you find it, grab it, is the 8-year. Because there was a substantial amount of 20 that was dumped into that, and so you're getting 8-year price, but it's a 20. And then obviously with the current ones, the one we didn't taste, obviously, of course, is the 15-year, which is bourbon and sherry cask.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's really got those.
Yeah,
those barrels seem so different, but
Mhm.
but they. And we work with another producer from India that does a 2/3 bourbon, 1/3 sherry cask whiskey, and it's kind of a neat combine. You want some grappa? No, Gepai. I was like, I gotta get a new.
Yeah, if you have a chance to get the 15 years old, you can thank me later because it's just delicious. It's send me a message and say thank you because yeah, it's delicious.
So I know that this is the one thing that I think all of us probably agree on is Japanese know how to balance their whiskeys. And so if you say they figured out how to marry the bourbon and the sherry casks, I don't have any trouble believing that, because they just, any Japanese whiskeys that I've tasted have always been so well balanced.
Yeah.
It's so harmonious.
Yeah. If you have a chance to try the 15 years old, you will absolutely love it. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. It's a very delicious product. Yes. Yeah.
I'm excited to see the results.
Has everybody voted? We got 2 people outstanding.
Which is me and Jim. But
You guys got to vote. You take.
I voted.
You got to vote? I didn't
voted.
vote. I deny
Vote.
it. How do I vote now?
Did you
Do
close
it right in. She can
I-
do it right in for the 15-year.
Oh, I didn't vote.
Yeah, my poll page disappeared somewhere.
I knew it was Jane.
That's what I was looking for. I'm like staring. I'm like, wait, it was here like 2 seconds ago. It's because I was looking at something else. Figures.
How do I relaunch it? Oh, I can't relaunch it. That's it. It's there. All right, screw it. You guys get to write in. I'm going to close this down. Luana and Jim.
Yeah.
What do you think was the winner tonight?
I think it's just the way everybody was. Well, interesting. There were certain people that were chit-chatting hard about the 10, and other people were chit-chatting pretty hard about the 15-year.
We had 2 10s, by the way.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Pardon.
lightly pitted in the yeah.
So
I think it was Kujira 10.
Jim, do you agree, or do you want to pick a different one?
no, I kind of think it might be that, except for there were some people that were very quiet about that.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking it might be a very divided vote. I think there's going to be some people that really like that Shinobu 15-year.
All right. Well, the results are in, and I gotta say, you're both right. Shinobu and Kujira are tied.
Ah!
And with Jane's
Wow.
write-in vote, Shinobu 15 takes it.
What do I win? A T-shirt?
Yes, please
Kujira
email
10.
Luana. She'll get you one right away.
Okay, good.
I actually told you right after, and then Shinobu 10 years go with Inari. Interesting.
Yeah, so first place was Shinobu 15 and Kujira 10 tied, and then second was Koyo. Wow, Koyo took second place, and then Shinobu 10-year and Kujira and Inari tied for third. Pretty
And
good.
everybody-
Awesome.
Well,
That's
y'all got
amazing.
good palates, that's for darn sure. I mean, just in hearing what you say about things, and like your votes, we're not just like rando that you could, because people talked about certain things and they leaned into those in your votes. That is fun. What are we doing tomorrow night?
You joke, but
Oh, I'm coming home from I've got a tasting, and then I'm going to be right in the middle of APEC. So there you go. I'm going to be in San Francisco tomorrow. So it'll be, by the time I get home, I'll be having a tasting of tequila.
Well, again, that's on the calendar. We'll talk offline. We have tastings lined up. I guess for the group to know, we're fully confirmed into March.
Wow.
1 week.
I think you should have Luana do a Baijiu tasting with y'all. I'd love.
How many people have tried Baijiu? Can I get a show of hands? All right, how many people like it?
Yeah, and I will tell you the reason, and you know, I'm not, obviously I'm playing, but I'm not. No one likes, unless you grew up in Baijiu culture, nobody likes it until about 20 tries in, and then you start to get it. And it's true. It is the #1 consumed spirit in the world that most of us don't know about, and the flavors are crazy, and it would be fun to like just to watch this,
the reactions.
Yeah, man, because again, y'all that tasted it before, you're like, yeah, you raised your hand for tasting it, but you didn't raise your hand for liking it. And
this feels like a Malort moment waiting to happen. This really does.
We're gonna do a lineup of Malort, Fernet, and just like all of it.
Okay, but
Pull this room over.
It sounds like, Vadim, we need to start at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we need to have at least 20 baijus lined up. Maybe 25.
My gosh.
And all you can eat Chinese food. Like a Chinese food buffet.
And you know, you're talking about something that is like 108 proof.
Well, here's what we could do. Everybody get a spittoon and just put it in your mouth and then spit it out, because you're not going to like the first 20 tries anyway.
No, I mean, it's not. It's funny though. The complexity of a baijiu is amazing. So I actually liked it when I first tried, but it was a heap of flavors that I'd never experienced in my life. #1, I didn't even know what sorghum was. So baijiu is mostly made from sorghum. Most people don't even know what it is. And I see people going on Google when I say sorghum, they're like, sorghum, what the heck is that, right? So that is what you taste the most when you try baijiu. So that itself, it's like, woo, you know, once you pass the sorghum flavor, then you're good to go. So it's a little bit more than rice, because rice whiskey is like, oh yeah, it's rice. I didn't expect that. It takes a little bit. Most people know sake. It takes a little bit of time to get adjusted to the rice. Although everybody had the experience with sake or eating rice before, but none of us have the experience of eating sorghum. None of us has
actually you have
tried anything with sorghum.
No, you have if you've had anything with corn syrup.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But you're not really. I mean, it's obviously it's evolved. It's not like eating a husk of sorghum. I would pay to see that. What?
Where's it made at?
Sorghum is a cereal.
Oh no! I mean the liquor you're talking about.
Baijiu.
China.
Yeah, baijiu is made in China, and it's there are different regions that create different styles. There are some of the brands are as prized as any of the whiskeys that y'all have prize. It's crazy.
That's why it's the #1 consumed spirit in the world, because all of China drinks it.
Well, it's like if this was the #1 pen in China, it would be the #1 pen in the world.
Yeah.
But there is an amazing groundswell of it globally, and here in California in particular, we sell a lot of baijiu.
It's our #1 product, isn't it?
Yeah, and we distribute, or we are importers, so we have other distributors that we do business with across the country, and they're pretty popular in some crazy states where you wouldn't expect it. And we're seeing interest in it in
Ohio.
No, I was leaning more towards, I think it's Oklahoma. It was somebody like that. We'd have to ask Amanda. I had her on the line through some of this just to share, a colleague of ours that does the national piece. And it's the funny part too will be and not to put this into any interesting perspective, when I've tasted it with men, we all are horrified the first flavor. Women, and this is, you know, just gender, whatever, is the other pretty flavors seem to come through, and the chaos kind of goes to the side. And part of that is because the female tongue palate has more taste buds per square inch than a man's, and so we have a tendency to just get hit by the heat and the flavor of Band-Aid and burning hair. And you know, y'all, the women find the prettiness in all these.
You are not selling this to us, I can tell you.
Yeah, I'm telling you though, I will bet one of Luana's paychecks that that at the end of a Baijiu tasting, all of you will at least not hate it.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt.
And I will bet that there will be some people.
High.
No, but think about it. And the two of you that have tasted it would agree with me. Oh, good night. The other part to this is there will be some of you that will be like, where can I get this?
Yeah.
I guarantee it. It's if anybody eats Sichuan Chinese food, like spicy, here's your drink. Anybody like to celebrate? Anybody like to not get a hangover after over celebrating? That's this stuff, man. Anybody want to drink something that's got history that goes back 1,000 years? Sorry, she's kicking me under the table, and we're not even in the same room. I know she is. This will be like, dude, I thought this was a whiskey event. All right.
Yes.
Hey.
Speaking of Japanese whiskey,
Yeah.
Is Baijiu considered a whiskey as well?
No, Baijiu is on its own category. It's not comparable to absolutely anything.
Okay, so sorghum is not considered a grain.
Well, it's not aged in barrels.
Okay, but a whiskey doesn't have to be aged.
you could, yes, it does, and you can make whiskey out of sorghum.
Okay,
It needs
so
to
it
be aged in barrels.
In
So
fact,
okay.
Buffalo Trace did one of those weirdo bottlings that had some Baijiu in it.
That had sorghum in it, not Baijiu. Or Baijiu.
I don't now. You might be right. I don't remember now, but
I mean,
but they
Baijiu
talked
is the
about
product,
Baijiu.
sorghum is the plant, so you can make whiskey out of sorghum because it's a grain, but you wouldn't like convert Baijiu into whiskey.
No, but I mean, they I don't think they blended Baijiu into it. I think they talked about sorghum because it was the Baijiu piece, is what they did. So there you go. I have to go pick up somebody at the airport. Anybody want to go with me?
Yes, absolutely.
I'll transfer it onto my.
involved?
Of course.
All right.
Hey, I don't mean to break this party up. I'm not. Keep going. But it was really a pleasure getting to hang out with all y'all. And
Well, we appreciate it, Jim. Thank you for joining us tonight.
thanks for inviting me, Luana.
Thank you, Jane.
Lulu. Thanks, Lulu. All right, see you guys.
Make sure you email her for your shirt that you won.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty excited about that. Hey, do I get a run? Is that a run DMC or run DRC?
Run VTS.
Oh, even better. There was one that was for the Bordeaux or the Burgundy producers. It was Run DRC. I thought that was awesome. All right, enough of that. See you guys.
Bye, Jay.
Bye.
Good night.
He seems like a very fun coworker.
Yeah, he is. Although we'd never see each other. He's up north, I'm here in the south, but we'd see each other maybe once a year. Yeah.
Wow, I picked up the Inari after it opened up in the glass. I had a cap on it, and I got like white peaches on the nose. It was really interesting.
I was just gonna say, I just went back to the Daimyo No, and I got a whiff of malt chocolate off the nose. That really surprised me.
Wow.
Interesting.
It was like a chocolate malt, just coming, that creaminess, and it did actually carry through slightly into the glass. I was like, wow, that's kind of fun. I love watching this stuff change. I was gonna say, I have actually had sorghum. We used to get it and pop it like popcorn.
Oh, really?
It's
Yeah.
like a variety of corn, isn't it?
Not exactly. It's closer to wheat, but it doesn't have gluten in it. It's used a lot as a substitute for quinoa.
Are you gonna make some and bring it on the 25th? Oh, I can't have any.
I would have to source it, and I haven't worked with sorghum in 30 years, but I could probably experiment and get
I
back.
can't have any anyway, so never mind.
Yeah. Well, at least it's gluten free. So.
But have you tried Baiju before? No.
No, I had never heard of Baiju.
Okay.
But
I've
had a lot of really weird old, like ancient style drinks. So I'd be like, yeah, I'd probably dig it. I can drink Sakanjaban like it's water, so I'm sure I could drink Baiju.
It is very delicious though, and it changes so much changes so much depending of the category of Baiju. Baiju has different categories within, so it's almost like a wine. And when you have the appellations, so Baijus are like that, like they're appellations within China, and the profile is very different from one another. So you know, you might always get one that you like more, or you might like everything, or you know, but in general, one of them you definitely will like it.
Yeah.
Could you recommend, I know this is a big ask, right? So, but could you recommend one that is typically a good introduction to Baiju?
Is that like saying what's a good wine to start with?
I know.
Yeah.
All the world of wine.
So I can tell you which is the most important Baiju in the world, and the one that drives everybody crazy and is the #1 product sold is called Motai, Quencho Motai. Now, Motai is the #1 Baiju, is the one sold the most. It's the hardest to find sometimes. I know there's some available right now because we just got a shipment, but sometimes we don't get anything for
This one?
for months. So, however, though,
White bottle, red cap.
in my opinion, Motai is actually the most difficult for a Western to drink.
Right.
And
I would
that's
expect that. I would expect that because we have really wildly different tastes.
So the Motai, it's part of a category called sauce aroma. So as I said, there are several different aromas. The most one of the most important ones is what is called sauce aroma. So it resembles a lot of soy sauce, and not just soy sauce, but all the sauces that China makes in their food. Okay. So it has that savory note, very profound, very pronounced savory notes in it. So it is so different, but is the real deal. So Motai is definitely the real deal of, you know, is the oldest distillery in China, is the most important one, is the most sold, and is the product that everybody's crazy about it. And sometimes, again, in the market in the US, it's so controlled by China because they can only produce so much that they have to give preference to their market, and then they have to give a little bit of preference to go serve the Chinese community around the world. So it goes by, okay, so the US has more people, so we're going to allow you guys to import more or less or whatever. So we had a drought basically of Motai for about a year. And when we got it, I had to really split the cases, like really selective with my clients, because it was a product that would disappear within minutes. But again, for me, it's a little bit difficult to drink at first. My personal favorite Baiju is actually a Shifeng, which is also a very old distillery. I have to get a picture here. I don't know how to do it. Yeah, so Shifeng is one of the oldest one. I think Vadim can do that better. Let me put the name here.
Year or 20 year?
Any of them, because they are part of a different profile called Shifeng. And I think that aroma is very floral, and I like that a lot. It's very delicious. It's almost like a perfume. You smell it, and it's like, wow, it's a perfume. I could definitely use as a perfume. So I like that one. 20 or 12 is part of the same category. Equally delicious.
Mm.
52%.
Yeah. And the bottle is beautiful. And all the Chinese bottles are all beautiful.
I mean,
Okay.
it totally makes sense that Jane would love this stuff. Statistically, 1 out of 4 people is Chinese. So 1, 2, 3, Jane's Chinese.
And yeah, and those products you find online, you find on Total Wines, you find all the big stores like Remedy, Mission, you know, all the main stores, you find all of them. Yeah, we can definitely organize another Baijiu tasting one day. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for introducing us to the besides Baijiu, these Japanese distilleries and brands we'd never tried before. So I hope everyone enjoyed a little dip into rice whiskeys. Sure we'll have some more in the future. And hopefully we can get Luana back to taste some more world whiskeys, part of their portfolio. I know there's some I've got earmarked, got my eye on, but we'll keep that
Yeah.
under wraps and surprise everyone in the future.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you very much for being here.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Luana.
Thank you, Lana.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.